compassion come from? How does empathy work? What is the phenomenon of interconnectedness? Tibetan Buddhist monks and nuns have grappled with these questions for centuries. But for the first time in the history, they are using a scientific approach. On the path to fulfilling one of the visions of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the recent years have seen Tibetan monastic scholars engage with scientists in exchanging and expanding their ideas and knowledge about the nature of reality. Upon the instruction of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives Science Initiatives began in the year 1999. His Holiness announced that he would like to introduce science education to monastic curriculum and assigned the library to shoulder this historic undertaking. Beginning in the year 2000 with its first science workshop for a group of 50 monks, the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives has been undertaking several initiatives under its science program. In this episode of In Conversation with Tibet TV, we would like to introduce you to the library's science program, for which we are honored to have Geshe Lhakdor, the Director of Tibetan Works and Archives, with us for this conversation. Tashtile Geshe. Geshe, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has always been advising us to become Buddhist of 21st century. And likewise, the goal of the Library of Works and Archives science program is also to open up the 21st century to Tibetan Buddhism. What does that mean? What does being a Buddhist of 21st century mean?
After coming into exile, His Holiness really wanted the Tibetan children to get both modern education and traditional Tibetan education. And later on he felt it's extremely important for the monastics also, both monks and nuns, to be conversant with science. So therefore it is with this background that His Holiness has always been talking also about becoming a Buddhist of the 21st century. Now when we talk about Buddhists of the 21st century, we need to know the state of 21st century. 21st century is a century of information, century of dialogue, century of religious harmony, and century of unexpected change. So keeping all this in view, His Holiness was making this statement because one, if you look at the fundamental principles of Buddhism, it's more than a religion which can adapt to 21st century. It can go with 22nd, 3rd, and on. So therefore, when he makes such a statement, he's really saying that you should make the fundamentals of the Buddha's teaching applicable, relevant to everybody's life. Like the teaching on interdependent origination, the teaching on impermanence, will stay forever. But unfortunately, sometimes, despite all these actual happenings in the world, people may not pay much attention regarding the relevance of Buddhism in the 21st century. Because ordinary people, they may still, find it comforting to go with all, customs, traditions, going around the temple, circumambulation, rituals, and things like that. So His Holiness is saying that these are minor. Let us go for the basic teachings of the Buddhism and make it relevant in today's world and make Buddhism sense in today's world. With this statement, he is saying that you should gain proper knowledge of what is there in the modern education, especially science, and then make a comparative study of those, philosophical or scientific teachings with the Buddhist teaching and make it relevant in today's world and make it beneficial to people's life. So that is his primary meaning. Yeah.
Recently, the library celebrated 20 years of Science for Monks program. What is this program, Science for Monks?
The Science for the Monks started in the year 1999 with the help of a benefactor, Bobby Segar Family Foundation. And when he met His Holiness the Dalai Lama and offered his help in any area, he may be useful. And His Holiness immediately, without thinking, said science. So Bobby Segar told me that from that it shows that teaching science to the monastics is there in His Holiness' mind for a long time. So then he came forward to sponsor all the workshops, programs, things like that. So the science for the monks started in 1999. So this is a science program which is basically between the library. It's a library project, but sponsored by the Segar Family Foundation. So we are celebrating that. Actually, it's not 20 years, 22 years of its founding. Yeah.
And talking about Bobby Segar, there is an initiative under his name, Segar Science Leadership Program. So what is this program? The main objective of this program is to produce more leaders and teachers to advance monastic learnings in nunneries and monasteries, right? So how many leaders and teachers have been produced?
This is something that I considered in relation to Bobby's nature. Because Bobby is basically a philanthropist, and he has been traveling almost all around the world. 70% of his time in a year goes around traveling around the world and helping wherever there is a need. But he does not offer 100% support. He would say financially offer 50% support, and then he would say the rest you need to do. You should all become leaders. So I took the clue from there, and from there I started that the monks and nuns who study science also later should be able to help others. Later in that sense, not necessarily a president or prime minister, nothing like that, but to help others once you get that knowledge. So that's the idea, yeah.
Right, and then there is monastic graduate project, right?
Yes.
So most of the Khenpos, Geshes, and Lobens, the abbots and heads of the monasteries participate in this. What are what are the expectations from them? What do the program expect out of these graduates?
So once I got this kind of vision from His Holiness Dalai Lama and support from Bobby Segar, I was kind of free to come up with new initiatives and new ideas to make it more successful and compelling. So I started few initiatives. One initiative which you just mentioned, the science for the Khenpos graduates, monastic graduates. I came with this initiative because I thought that unless you are to bring about a change in the monastic curriculum or monastic institution, which is not that easy, especially in the beginning. So you need to recruit those who already have completed their studies. Because those who have already completed their studies, they have much say in the monasteries. They can be teacher in that sense. So with that plan, I recruited all these Khenpos and Geshes from different monastic institutions. So they are already kind of leaders, they are already teachers. So what they need is more exposure, especially in science, so that in their teaching or in their work in the administrative circles, they can be more influential. So that is the reason, yeah.
His Holiness was installed as the Presidential Distinguished Professor at Emory in the year 2007, yes. And it signaled a firm commitment from both the sides to work towards the benefit of a common humanity. And one of the much talked about science programs of the library is Emory Science Initiative, ETSI. Tell us about this program, Geshe.
Very interesting program. His Holiness has connection with Emory University for a long time. He has been visiting that university for a long time. And then when I became director of the library, my very good friend Geshe Lhakdor, who was already teaching there, he was very happy that I became the director. And he said, Geshe, let us do something together. Do you have any plan to come to this area? Then I said, I have immediate plan, visiting Miami and things like that for 1 month program. Then he said, can you come to Emory? I said, no, my hand is already full, I can't come. He said, no, this is a very important program we can make. And then I asked him, what is the program? Then he broached this subject of teaching science initiative with the Emory University and said, this is very important, I'll definitely come. So I spent, I think, 1 week there. I was welcomed by Emory University as a distinguished fellow visitor. And with that, we started this science program with the Emory University.
Geshe, overall, when you look at these program of science program of Library of Works and Archives, there are different projects: Science for Monks, Segar Science Leadership Program, Monastic Graduate Projects, and then the Emory Science Initiatives. So overall, when you look at all these programs, what do you see the major outcomes of these projects?
No, regarding major outcome, when His Holiness, visited Emory University and also discussed about the possible outcome of science teaching. Bobby Segar also discussed this with His Holiness and asked this question to His Holiness, what would you expect? His Holiness said maybe 100 years after. So he had that vision, And so from that point of view, we may not be able to claim, having achieved much. But having said that, like for example, I remember very clearly when we first published the first handbook of science, which included physics, neuroscience, and everything, and launched it in Emory University with His Holiness's presence. His Holiness was overjoyed. He said, I did not think about it. I visited many universities, they made tall promises, and nothing much happened. But here you have produced this excellent book within just a short time. So that was one thing. And then, of course, not contented with that, we came with this, especially with the Emory University, which I did not explain much, is one big achievement working with the Emory University with that science program is we were able to publish proper curriculum science books, both in physics and neuroscience and things like that. And now they are all translated. I think we have published over 10 books, which are all bilingual, English and Tibetan with illustrations. So everybody the monks, everybody can now study this comfortably. So that's a big achievement. Translating, very well, translating just one book is not that easy. Then we also managed to publish, for the first time probably in the Tibetan history, publish a proper science dictionary. That's one thing. Then also we were able to, I think it was year 2014, I think, all the three major Gelugpa monasteries plus Geshe Lhakdor, they signed, we had 2 days intensive meeting, how to make the science curriculum adaptable to the curriculum that they have in the monastery. And then after 2 days meeting, they all signed with the presence of Gandhi Thiba, Sherpa Chuje, Changsa Chuje, all the abbots. They signed and made it a regular study program in their monastic study. So they have to study science for 6 years. The first 4 years when they're just preparing for Geshe, and the next 2 years in the first years of Geshe Lhakdor degree. So that is now a permanent program that is studied there, and then examination is also done on the science program. So that is a big achievement. It's really difficult to move the whole monastic institution to come up with such a conclusion. And of course there are other monasteries nearby belonging to other Buddhist schools of thought also. So those are big achievements. And then in addition to that, whether you may count it in the big achievement or not, but we also work with Department of Religion to organize a science program every year. And then the science staffs also teach science to the nunneries nearby. For example, our science staffs are right now in Kopan Monastery teaching the nuns science there. So these are some very, very important achievements. And then the most important achievement I would consider is the change in the attitude that we were able to bring about in the minds of thousands of monks now, especially in the big learning centers. In the initial stage, honestly speaking, both the people who are in the higher administration and also the monastics, they would look at the teaching of science with a sneer, thinking that this might interrupt our Buddhist study, things like that. So there was much reluctance. We have no time to tell the whole story, but we had to undergo many difficulties and problems. But now, the monks and nuns in most of the monasteries and nunneries, they take it for granted. This is something that we must all study. So they're exposed to it. So that, I think, is a big change, because to change the mindset of it's very, very difficult. Yes.
One last question, a very basic thing that people would like to know. What is the level of participation from the monasteries and nunneries? Do the monasteries and nunneries in India, Nepal and Bhutan all participate in the science program?
Not all. That is a little bit difficult still, because we can't force this program to any monastery, especially in the initial stage. We had contacted all the Tibetan Buddhist schools of thought, and also monasteries in Nepal, and also monasteries in Bhutan, things like that. But some of the monasteries are not forthcoming. Some of them send monks to participate for a few years, and then nothing happens, things like that. So that is one thing. But we are trying our best to involve as many monks or nuns as possible. And not only this, we also organize major science and Buddhist dialogue conferences, and also major science exhibitions. One of the exhibitions went all the way to New Delhi and then San Francisco, and drew the attention of many, many people. So there are many dimensions in this program.
Mr. Geshe La, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. That was Geshe Lhakdor, the Director of Library of Works and Archives. Through this conversation, we hope you have gained some insight into the library's very historic initiative, its science program. Thank you for watching In Conversation with Tibet TV.